Welcome to Anomaly Now for Wednesday, August 13th, 2025. This is the weekly, sometimes live news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives, aka the Scientific Anomaly Institute. I'm your host, Miles Lewis, transmitting to you from Austin, Texas, where we were born and raised. Well, or rather, the Archives was born and raised here. The Archives was founded in 2003 and has been around ever since. We are dedicated to the preservation and public education regarding materials dealing with all things anomalous, particularly UFOs, parapsychology, and all crazy, wild, weird things in between. Got a lot to cover today. So speaking of what a weird, wild world it is, here in Austin, this past Monday was pretty bad day for a lot of folks. Sadly, there were 3 people murdered in Northwest Austin by a mentally unstable individual known to police. He murdered them in a Target parking lot, carjacked a vehicle, crashed it, carjacked a dealership vehicle, went on a high-speed chase across town, and was apprehended, I think, dancing naked in the street in South Austin in some old stomping grounds of mine and my friends. But he's in custody. And that same afternoon of this past Monday, there was a SWAT standoff at a motel on Interstate 35 in South Austin that is known to a lot of friends of mine. And just nearby at a major intersection, there was a fatal car crash that also injured a pedestrian with the debris. And that was terrible. And it also created one of the worst traffic jams in this neck of the woods I have seen in my lifetime, whereby 2 major arteries, north, south, east, west, in South Austin were shut down, understandably, due to the terrible traffic accident. And this was resulting in basically bumper to bunker cars in all the surrounding neighborhoods. Thankfully, I did not see any subsequent road rage altercations as a result of those reroutings, but goodness, may we all survive and live in better times. Okay, well, as you likely know, you can go to the Anomaly-Archives.org website. You can follow along with the news links that we'll be talking about via that Anomaly-Archives.org website, or our Flipboard at flipboard.com/@Anomaly-Archives, and click through and you'll get to our Flipboard where we aggregate the tons of news links, more than we ever can get to in any single show. We do archive those and repost them on the website periodically. But yeah, if you go to the website, scroll down on the right-hand side, there's a sidebar there where there's usually the top, I think, 20 links. But yeah, there's thousands and thousands of links over in the Flipboard. And again, if you dig through the Anomaly-Archives.org website, you'll find a ton of news over there. So let's see. What was I going to start with? Oh, and yes, we'd really appreciate it if you would check out our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/Anomaly Archives, where you can find a lot of information about the various tiers that we offer. The free audio only version of our podcast is available through there as well as everywhere else. But if you join, you get access to that and a special feed that sometimes has other rare stuff that we throw in there. We've been posting a lot of rare archival audio and video material. And of course, on a monthly basis, we have online live lecture series by fellow seekers, anomalous researchers like Professor Wham, Brent Rains, Joshua Cutchin, and so many more. But yeah, you'll want to go check that out. And yeah, coming up in the next few months, we are going to have presentations by Expanding Frontiers founders Erica Lukes and Jack Brewer. We're also going to have presentations by Tui Snyder, the wonderful cemetery symbology expert, who also, of course, presented to our Anomaly Archives audience back in 2020 for our online Streamathon fundraiser. And we've got presentations from Brad Abrahams. You may know him as the director of such fantastic fun films as Love and Saucers. And we've also got Barbara Fisher, who is no stranger to the weird and anomalous, who, besides being an experiencer herself and quite the accomplished writer and editor, has worked closely with stellar researchers such as Joshua Cutchin on his various books, including something new coming out later this year. Can't wait to share that all with y'all, and many, many more lectures coming up in the coming months and on into 2026. So yeah, so again, you can go to flipboard.com and see the latest headlines there. One other announcement, we've been tabling, doing some fun outreach events at our good friend Saul Ravencraft's Damned Show events that are now happening monthly at the new Nature's Treasures Event Center that's at 11055 North Interstate Highway 35. That's Nature's Treasures is this classic Austin crystal and rock shop, but that also caters to metaphysical, spiritual practitioners. And Saul is one of those weird ones that they often feature. And he's been doing this great, weird, anomalous, damned variety show that you'll want to check out. And you can go to his website, damnedshow.com, DAMNEDSHOW.com, and find out all the details there. And we urge you to support Saul Ravencraft's efforts. He's a full-time weirdo, and we love him. Yeah, so last week we were talking about the weird situation that occurred at the Contact in the Desert, allegedly, for 2025, whereby it was rumored, it was reported by Whitley Strieber in conversation with Wade Johnson. And sorry, folks, I'm trying to do technical stuff here, and it's not always a good idea. So Contact in the Desert 2025. Just a couple of months ago, there was a panel discussion, and during one of the transfer of people on the stage, a attendee, a woman who's not yet been named, photographed the stage and the participants, and upon looking at the image on her phone, noticed some strange images that she claims she did not see on the screen that she was photographing. So let me see if I can bring this up here. So at this event, at the Contact in the Desert, there was this panel discussion called Unraveling Reality from Psychedelics to Synchronicity. And this featured a number of speakers, including, Clyde Lewis was the moderator. The presenters included Anthony Peake, Paul Hynek, Adam Apollo, Jason Quit, Rizwan Virk, and Dr. Pascal Michael. Now, I haven't heard anybody else reporting on this other than this video that we talked about last week that Whitley Strieber on his Unknown Country had on his friend Wade Johnson, who brought this to his attention at the event, and who took these weird anomalous images, allegedly plugged into something like ChatGPT to do a image merging effect, and created a third image that looked like a bald person. And we'll show you that in here in a second. And then when shown to Greg Bishop, he said, "Oh, that looks like my friend Mac Tonys, who passed away in 2009. Whitley being someone who believes he's in communication with the dead, with his deceased wife, and obviously has had a wide range of strange, bizarre, and anomalous experiences, thought this is Mac Tony's communicating from beyond the grave about the importance of his book, The Cryptoterrestrials, which was published posthumously in 2010 or 11, and which is a very important book in which I think anybody should given the chance, like Whitley was and Greg was, to talk about its importance, and now perhaps more than ever. And in fact, Greg's afterward to the book said he wrote that he thought this would be a very important book 10 or 15 years from now, from when it was published. And all of that I think is very interesting, and I think it's worth watching. I'm highly skeptical of this situation, but I too love the idea that whether or not it's a true communication from the beyond, from Mac Tony's, it's a great opportunity to explore the mysterious, the anomalous, the unexplained, and also to encourage people to check out Mac Tony's book, The Cryptoterrestrials, if you never have. Now, the other image I have up is this screenshot from the website for Contact in the Desert. Ironically, whoever put this website together, the panel discussion was called Unraveling Reality from Psychedelics to Synchronicity, but they mistyped deliberately. I don't, is it an accident or deliberate? They mistyped the part of the title, both on the webpage and as the HTML page name. They misspelled it as Unrevealing Reality from Psychedelics to Synchronicity. And the irony here, I think, is pretty apparent. But there you go. And apparently some attendees have photographed other things from that actual panel, which is not when this occurred, not when these anomalies occurred, but this was, I guess, flashed up on the screen. It shows, again, the list of the attendees. And in fact, here is somebody's cell phone camera footage of the attendees, including panel discussion moderator Clyde Lewis on the far right. And all right, so here's some images of Mac Tony's. And okay, here's the resulting image of alleged resulting image of these images. So the unnamed woman took these two pictures of the stage that show two different interlaced at one point in one of the images, placard promotional images. There's this massive LED video wall behind the stage that was promoting the upcoming events. And here you can see Whitley Strieber, Living with the Unknown, is the name of one of them listed. I'm not sure who is on stage. None of them look bald. And here is this tri-color RGB, red, green, blue, color separated image of a semi-profile head that allegedly appears in this woman's photograph, but did not appear to people on stage. So perhaps there's just some weird flicker effect. Meanwhile, here's the other image where you can start to see the other promotional placard, the Unraveling Reality panel from Psychedelics to Synchronicity being promoted. And it's a slightly different angle, semi-profile picture or tricolor or red, green, blue separated image of this bald head. Now, in both of these images, I feel like I can kind of see a little bit of hair on them. And in all honesty, you know who I think that I really think this is? Anthony Peake. I don't have here's again, these images of Mac Tony's that the people are Greg and Whitley were describing as it reminding them of. And I, see that. And of course, people have made the joke, I think, that Mac Tony's kind of looks like the alien on the cover of Cryptoterrestrials. But more interesting, yes, is this Illumined Black. What is this? So over our website is a page that we have for Mac Tony's, and you can find links about the stuff there, including some great video montages created by his close friend Paul Kimball, Mac Tony's Remembered, that was posted back in October 2009, and links to the Cryptoterrestrials published by Anomalous books, and some past videos of Mac Tony's. So besides the Cryptoterrestrials, he only published 2 other books, and the other 2 were published before his death. And one was called After the Martian Apocalypse, which was about the face on Mars and other Mars anomalies. A very rare book by him is called Illumined Black and Other Adventures. And here you can see the original cover for that. This kind of clock face and spacewalking astronaut and circuitry, all of which are things that Mac liked to play with. He was really considered a rising cyberpunk writer. I would describe him as. He got a lot of praise from people like with William Gibson and Bruce Sterling. Anyway, this book has been long out of print and hard to come by and very expensive. But as it turns out, there is a new reprinting of it that just came out in July, a month after this weird incident at Contact in the Desert and after Strieber did this show featuring talk of this situation. All right. So yes, over here at this Mac Tony's page on the Anomaly Archives, you can see all these photos and links to videos, yada, yada, yada. Here's the original Illumin Black cover. And here's the new one, which, yes, if you're paying attention, you'll go, wait a minute, isn't that utilizing the same tricolor separated effect, RGB, red, green, blue, as the weird image that was being talked about? Yes, indeed. Coincidence? Probably, almost certainly. So, okay, here, just to sum all this up, I really just think it's probably Anthony Peake's face that was on that image promoting that panel discussion, which synchronistically either wasn't visible to the audience and was visible to this person's camera, or it was there all along and everybody's mistaken and they just don't remember seeing it. Nobody else is, I don't know of anybody else that was there that's privy to this discussion that's come forward saying, oh no, it was there, or no, I didn't see it either. Whatever. It's all, again, just a great opportunity to promote Mac's work. I was thinking of reading some quotes for myself from Mac's Cryptoterrestrials book, because when I read it, I took copious notes. It's not a huge book. I would encourage you to go check it out. You can still buy it over at anomalistbooks.com. There's a link to it through the Mac Tony's page, and if you just search for it, you can find it. But isn't it interesting that this new reprint company called solarpressbooks.com, their latest release is a republished version of Illumin Black, the collected short fiction of Mac Tony's, which features additional material. So they went above and beyond on this and has, I think, a new introduction. Yes, this edition features an introduction by Mike Cleland. Of course, Mike Cleland of UFO Alien Abduction Owl fame. He did the illustrations for the original Cryptoterrestrials book and was a friend of Mac's as well. And then there's an afterword by Paul Kimball. So this is pretty cool. And there's, like I say, additional fictional material that they got from other sources that hadn't been in the original version. So kudos to them. Is it all a stealth marketing campaign by Solar Press Books? Did they have an inside person there seeding this and hoping, that somebody would talk about it? Highly unlikely. That's my paranoid conspiratorial version of this. All right. So also, if you go over to the Mac Tony's page on the Anomaly Archives, you can find a link to a playlist that somebody named Justin Antsy, that features 42 videos about Mac Tony's or of Mac Tony's. Several of these are the ones that Paul Kimball had put up, as well as others that people have cannibalized and repurposed for their own purposes, promoting their own interest in the Cryptoterrestrials. There's also some other rare videos, including one hosted by Mike Cleland. That's where when Mac Tony's hosted Life from Other Planets. These other remembrances as well. Like I said, there's some other weird stuff, but there's also lots of redos of interviews that Mac Tony's appeared in or was being discussed by various researchers. And so very interesting collection here. But there was something I completely forgot about, which is the VOA, Voice of America Learning English YouTube channel, had done a piece 12 years ago called Dealing with Digital Legacies After Users Die. And they are talking about, one case of a user who, a person who lived, who was prolific online, who passed away, and the difficulties dealing with a digital legacy. There's another one from 15 years ago, Death and Digital Legacy by Adele McAleer over at Ignite Montreal. Anyway, Mac was a very, technologically oriented young man and was a very active blogger and wrote about technology. And so in some ways, it's not a surprise that he would be recognized as somebody whose legacy needed to be preserved, but and has been. MacTonys.com has been preserved, and you can go check that out as well and read past blogs of his. Anyway, that's enough said on that. But there's all these old interviews with Tim Banal as well, just lots and lots of stuff. And you can find a link to all those over at the Anomaly Archives page for Mac Tonys. All right. What next? In the subject area of, one last thing. Yeah. So, I did speak to Patrick Quige about this whole situation with Mac Tonys and his CT crypto-terrestrial book getting rediscovered. And, since they're the ones who published it and went to great lengths to do so, I was happy to see after our conversation that they've covered it over at Anomalous.com. One of their writers has written a blurb about this discussion and the video and the images, and they're not making any claims or conclusions, but I'm glad to see them directing folks to that. And of course, it is an opportunity for them to promote the book that they still sell, which, by the way, the subtitle I'd forgotten: A Meditation on Indigenous Humanoids and the Aliens Among Us, Cryptoterrestrials. Anyway, great stuff. Just really appreciate them making note of this, even that as I am very skeptical of what the nature of it truly is. All right, folks, let's move right into some technological news here. I want to thank my good friend, Pete. Pete, thank you for making me aware of this essay, this paper from circa February 2023 over at the ISA Institute of Labor Economics. The strange source for this, IZA.org. That's IZA Institute of Labor Economics, initiated by Deutsche Post Foundation. And it's titled Extraterrestrial Artificial Intelligence, the Final Existential Risk? ? And its introduction or abstract reads, the possibility that artificial extraterrestrial intelligence poses an existential threat to humanity is neglected. It is also the case in economics, where both AI existential risks and the potential long-term consequences of an AGI are neglected. This paper presents a thought experiment to address these lacunas. It is argued that it is likely that any advanced extraterrestrial civilization that we may encounter will be an AGI, and such an AGI will pose an existential risk. Two arguments are advanced for why this is the case. One draws on the dark forest hypothesis and another on the galactic colonization imperative. Three implications for how we govern AI and ensure against potential existential risks follow. These are: 1, accelerating the development of AI as a precautionary step. 2, maintaining economic growth until we attain the wealth and technological levels to create AGI and expand into the galaxy. And 3, putting more research and practical effort into solving the Fermi paradox. Several areas where economists can contribute to these three implications are identified. And you can download that essay for free over there at iza.org. If I came across this years ago, I do not remember it. And so I want to thank Pete for bringing it back to my attention, given all the current state of the burgeoning AI apocalypse. It seems very appropriate. Perhaps similarly, over at therap.com, Alien franchise has always feared AI and big corporations. That's more relevant than ever. The new FX series Alien Earth traffics in familiar themes about greed, oligarchy, and mysterious robots that tie into what's going on in the real world. This by Brian Lowry, again, over at The Wrap. Haven't had the chance to read this. I'm very much looking forward to watching this. I am a huge fan of the Alien franchise. The second movie by James Cameron, Aliens, was a massive influence on me and my closest film noir friends. And you should maybe go check this out if you're interested. It begins by saying the Alien movies vary widely in quality. There arguably hasn't been a truly satisfying one since the first two at 79 and 86. But a key thread has endured across the 46 years. However scary the xenomorphs are, Alien has always feared AI and the greed of faceless corporations. And in that respect, its time has come. The latest entry in the franchise, Alien Earth, which premieres on Tuesday, certainly exhibits those political undercurrents while bringing the threat home, both in the location and the shift from theaters to FX and Hulu, where only your neighbors can hear you scream. Granted, nobody comes to an Alien-branded project, a franchise with one foot firmly planted in sci-fi and horror, for a lecture about the perils of unfettered capitalism Still, the underlying apprehensions feel even timelier now, from the AI threat to the notion of corporations supplanting governments. Yeah, given our recent rants here and elsewhere on the show and with friends about the influence of billionaires on the UFO field and the AI tech frontier and the weird, scary overlaps of all of these things, the new drone craziness. I'm curious to see what comes of this new show. The article also goes on to say, in the broad strokes, though, this latest addition to the mythology, as conceived by showrunner Noah Hawley, who previously translated Fargo to TV, very much contains the same core of distrusting those in charge, along with some new wrinkles that work more fitfully. Interestingly enough, I've been binging, finally, the Fargo TV series, and I just finished the one that also features the guy pictured here from who's in the new Alien Earth, Tim Oliphant, and who was also in one of the seasons of Fargo, and whose name Noah Hawley, Hawley, I've been seeing a lot in the credits as I've been watching. Anyway, I know no spoilers here on this article or the series, I hope, because I have not watched it yet. So I assume there's got to be some Aliens fans out there who are curious about this. Meanwhile, continuing in this theme of technology, over at Mediaite.com, alarming new study finds smartphones ruining our brains at unprecedented speeds. Again, no surprises here, right? Any parent with a kid addicted to TikTok or Instagram is familiar with the concern that it's ruining their brain. I'm of a certain age where I heard that refrain regularly from my dad as I settled in each summer afternoon to watch reruns of Gilligan's Island, The Brady Bunch, and The Partridge Family. Yep, it was the golden age of reruns. But what was once hyperbole has turned into science, and the results are beyond alarming. The universal addiction to smartphones is actively ruining our brains, especially Generation Z, and at a pace that should absolutely freak everyone out. Financial Times recently published a devastating analysis of American personality changes using data from the Understanding America study, and the findings should stop you cold. In less than a decade, conscientiousness, the trait most likely linked to responsibility, follow-through, and self-control, has collapsed among young adults, allegedly. For those aged 16 to 39, it's not a gradual erosion, it's a plunge from respectability into the low 30th percentile. Older adults who aren't addicted to smartphones, meanwhile, remain essentially unchanged. A graphic from the Post recently went viral. It shows young adults' personalities are changing, with conscientiousness and freefall, relative change in strength of different personality traits, 2014 average equals 50 by age groups. And they show these four different graphs: conscientiousness, neuroticism, agreeableness, and extroversion across these date ranges from, as it says, 2014 to, it looks like 2024. You can check out that graph by going to this article. For Financial Times write-up generously sums up the findings. Quote, while a full explanation of these shifts requires thorough investigation, there will be many factors at work. Smartphones and streaming services seem likely culprits. The advent of ubiquitous and hyper-engaging digital media has led to an explosion of distraction, as well as making it easier than ever to either not make plans in the first place or to abandon them. The sheer convenience of the online world makes real-life commitments feel messy and effortful. And the rise of time spent online and the attendant decline in face-to-face interactions enable behaviors such as ghosting. There's much more at this article, and of course, it's sourcing to the Financial Times. Explore if you dare. Now, moving along to some frontier archaeology or just regular archaeology, you decide. This one from KUT.org, that's Austin's UT, University of Texas Public Broadcasting Station. KUT.org headline, Acrocantha what? This dinosaur's footprint was found in the Austin area after the July floods. Oh my gosh. KUT 90.5 FM, article by Katie McAfee, published August 7th. Several massive three-toed footprints etched in limestone were discovered near Big Sandy Creek during cleanup after the July 5th flood. Some of the dinosaur tracks were hidden by brush, others had been covered in sediment that was scoured away by floodwaters. Quote, it's one of those sort of bittersweet things about our job, is that it's the cataclysmic events that often preserve fossils in the first place and then also are exposing them, says Matthew Brown, a paleontologist at UT Austin. The footprints were created some 115 million years ago, Brown said, when what is now a neighborhood in northwest Travis County was a beach on the western interior seaway. The tracks were likely made by an Acrocanthosaurus, the largest carnivore in North America during the early Cretaceous period. They had slender bodies that stretched about 35 feet, small arms, and sharp, serrated teeth to sink into prey. Several large, round imprints that Brown believes are from a Palyxiosaurus, a giant long-necked herbivore, were also found. Acrocanthosaurus haven't gotten the pop culture movement that, say, a T-Rex has. There are differences between the two, but Brown said they are mostly comparable. Quote, if they were chasing any one of us, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, he said. Dinosaur tracks aren't uncommon in central Texas. Brown said the footprints are most likely related to a known dinosaur trackway in Leander. Historically, they've been revealed by extreme weather events. A major drought in the summer of 2022 unveiled a set of Acrocanthosaurus tracks an hour away from Fort Worth. Brown said the footprints offer insight into the animal's behavior. Several parallel sets of tracks were found in Big Sandy Creek, meaning either multiple dinosaurs were traveling together or one dinosaur was pacing. Paleontologists can study the spacing of the footprints to glean if the Acrocanthosaurus was chasing the Palyxiosaurus. Some of the tracks were previously identified by paleontologists in the 80s. Others have never been seen before. Brown said UT paleontologists plan to return to the site and use new technology like drones and laser surface scanning to see what information they can uncover. Quote, we are used to new discoveries overturning our long-held ideas on a semi-regular basis, Brown said. And that's part of the exciting thing for us, is finding new stuff and having to reframe our perspective. Good on you, Mr. Brown. Other headlines you may want to check out over at BBC.com. Archaeologists unveil 3,500-year-old city in Peru. This came out in July. Archaeologists have announced the discovery of an ancient city in Peru's northern Barranca province. The 3,500-year-old city, named Penico, is believed to have served as a key trading hub connecting early Pacific Coast communities with those living in the Andes Mountains and Amazon Basin. Located 200 kilometers north of Lima, the site lies about 600 meters, 1,970 feet above sea level, and is thought to have been founded between 1800 and 1500 BC, around the same time that early civilizations were flourishing in the Middle East and Asia. Researchers say the discovery sheds light on what became of the America's oldest civilization, the Corral. And here's a shot that's cited saying, an aerial view of the archaeological zone of Penico in Peru, an ancient city established 3,500 years ago. Cool. Over at bbcnews.com. That's our bbc.com. And this one over at thedebrief.org by Ryan Whalen. Quote, I'm stunned and flabbergasted. Scientists were, quote unquote, blown away by a rare fossil discovery challenging past thinking on pre-dinosaur evolution. It begins with a tiny tree-dwelling reptile from the Triassic has ruffled the feathers of the paleontological community, challenging everything we thought we knew about pre-dinosaur evolution. The new discovered prehistoric reptile, Myrasora grauvagelli, was found to possess unusual structures resembling feathers, yet entirely distinct from those of birds or dinosaurs. Dating back more than 100 million years before the first flying dinosaurs, according to a new paper. The small 6-inch long reptile exhibited a curious combination of feathers, clutching feet like a monkey, a narrow bird-like skull, a prehensile tail, and a row of faux feathers along its back. It likely perched in treetops around 247 million years ago. The discovery also resolves a decades-old mystery surrounding a Soviet-era fossil. And that is, of course, over at thedebrief.org. And then the last one in this section we have is from popularmechanics.com. A man was perfectly frozen in ice for 28 years. The glacier just spit him back out. A painful 3 decades long search can finally come to a close. Scary. Here's what you'll learn when you read this. Yep. A 31-year-old Pakistani man who went missing in June 1997 in an ice cave was found perfectly preserved last week by a local shepherd. The discovery puts an end to a painful 3-decade-long search for a family that tirelessly searched for his body in the mountains, in the mountainous Kohistan region. As glaciers retreat around the world due to climate change, discoveries of bodies or ancient artifacts will likely increase as melting ice reveals their frozen tombs. There's some other interesting examples that have these various related stories in this article. A related story: man frozen in cave for 47 years identified. What I saw was unbelievable. Khan told BBC Urdu the body was intact. The clothes were not even torn. For 28 years, Nasiruddin lay mummified in the glacial ice. He underwent a quick freezing process that then protected the body from moisture and oxygen. Pakistan is home to some 7,000 glaciers, the largest amount outside of Earth's polar regions. Wow. And like many glaciers around the world, these ice giants are slowly disappearing due to anthropogenic climate change. Another related story with more details: Otzi, the Iceman's tattoos have upended archaeology. Again, all of this is over at popularmechanics.com. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back, folks. Thank you for staying with us. And please, as usual, like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, blah, 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 blah. Subscribe to our podcast either on YouTube or Spreaker or Spotify or Apple, iPod, podcasts, iTunes, whatever, all the different ways. Whatever works best for you, or don't. Or actually, we'd really like you to go and subscribe to our podcast through our Patreon. That's another way you can listen to it as well. And you don't have to watch this version with me and look at my made-for-radio face. Okay, so moving into our cryptozoology portion of the program, I just want to go, yay! Our good friend Craig Woolheater has gotten some more attention for his efforts in promoting Bigfoot culture, Sasquatch culture, cryptozoology culture. This one over at texashighways.com with this nice picture of him next to that classic Bigfoot statue that is there near the event center where they hold the cryptozoology conference every year. The Texas Bigfoot conference that he puts on. Craig has been doing this for so many years and has branched off into so many other areas as well. But this one over again at texashighways.com. A Jefferson native continues the search for Sasquatch. Texas Bigfoot Conference founder Craig Woolheater believes in the big guy, by Addie Broyles. On Memorial Day weekend in 1994, Craig Woolheater was driving home to Dallas from New Orleans on US 71 in central Louisiana when he and his then girlfriend saw a 7-foot-tall gray figure on the side of the road. He wanted to turn around. His girlfriend said, "No way." He's been fascinated with the elusive Bigfoot ever since. A few years later, Woolheater's parents operated a bed and breakfast in Jefferson, a town with a long history of Sasquatch sightings, also considered to be, as an aside, the most haunted city in Texas. It is a really old, awesome little town. Yes, so his parents operated a bed and breakfast in Jefferson, a town with a long history of Sasquatch sightings. When he attended the Southeast Ohio Bigfoot Conference in the late 90s and decided to bring the concept to Texas, Woolheater determined Jefferson was the perfect location. The inaugural event took place a few days after 9/11. Quote, "We had 130 people show up," he says. "It was kind of nice to have something to bring folks together," unquote. Declared the Bigfoot capital of Texas by town proclamation in 2018, Jefferson and its residents have embraced the hairy cryptid. Many restaurants have Bigfoot-themed menu items, and nearly every store sells related merchandise. There's even a 6-foot, 3,000-pound statue on Jefferson's nature trail that locals call Bigfoot Alley. Oh, yeah, so it goes on to say, Bigfoot is just one of Woolheater's many passions in a town with a busy schedule of historical home tours, car shows, and Civil War reenactments. Woolheater has organized several events to draw in new crowds. He runs a convention for Mazda Miata enthusiasts each March and the Texas UFO Con, which takes place in August. But Bigfoot fever sure seems to have taken over, he says. Unfortunately, I believe this year's UFO conference, Texas UFO Con, was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. Not privy to all that. But he's also organized Bigfoot film festivals and, like they mentioned, the Mazda Miata March Madness. Anyway, known Craig for few decades now. Of course, lots more cryptozoology headlines thanks to our friend Tim Banal over at coasttocoastam.com. This one, North Carolina driver spots possible Sasquatch crossing road. A North Carolina motorist could not believe her eyes when the car in front of her suddenly stopped and what appeared to be a Sasquatch dashed across the road. The peculiar incident was reported to the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization by witness Susan King, who explained that the sighting occurred on this past Friday, August 1st. As she and her fiancé were driving to the town of Highlands, their trip took a weird turn when the car ahead of them slammed on its brakes. What caused the curious action, King said, was a large black creature that scrambled across the road on 2 feet. You can read more about that at coasttocoastam.com and over at you can links, of course, to the original sighting report at the bfro.net. That's the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, bfro.net. And there are some maps and graphics to help show where this occurred, including a street view of the area. All right, what else we got? Oh, yes. Another one. Thank you, Pete. This one from kaxe.org. That is, I believe, one of the local news stations in the Bemidji area. Social media video shares apparent alligator sighting near Floodwood. This is from July 30th. A video supposedly of an alligator swimming near Floodwood, Minnesota, gained traction online, and the local conservation officer said people just want to know if it's real. A video claiming to show an alligator swimming near Floodwood has gained traction on social media since its posting Saturday, July 26th. The video's poster says the Department of Natural Resources confirmed the sighting and told the spotters that it won't do anything about the gator unless it's a menace. But Brookston Conservation Officer Derek Peterlin, who patrols Floodwood, said it might be an alligator, but no one from the DNR has confirmed it to his knowledge. Quote, "We got really high water. We got a lot of things floating around in the rivers now because the high water's taking everything with it," Peterlin said. "So I don't know what to think." Peterlin said he didn't take the report of the sighting. He didn't take the report of the sighting and has only heard about the video. Chris Balzer, a DNR area wildlife manager in Cloquet, said there are mixed opinions on whether or not it shows an alligator, but he said the DNR has not confirmed the sighting. Quote, "I told them that it might be a gator, but that's not confirmation in my mind," Balzer said, "but I think maybe it's misinterpretation of the words that were used. There aren't concerns for public safety," said Peterlin, and no one has called him worried for their safety. Quote, "They're just more concerned about, is this real or is this a joke or what is going on here? Finding the supposed gator would be like finding a needle in a haystack," he said, "but if someone reported it, he would likely be the one to respond." Quote, "I don't think it'd be surprising to folks. We don't really have a policy on how to deal with gators," Balzer said. "If there is a gator in the Floodwood River, one of the possible explanations is that maybe someone had it as a pet or something and it got loose or it got too big and they let it go. It's not going to make it to winter. It's not an invasive species or anything." Peterlin said alligators are unprotected animals in Minnesota, meaning there's no hunting seasons or rules. So if somebody ended up taking it, we would want to know, but I don't think there's any legal ramifications or anything like that for taking it if you saw it, because we don't want it here as much as anybody else or gator. Anyway, that's over at kaxe.org. Again, thank you, Pete. Appreciate the out of place animal report. And moving on to lake monsters, skeptic Sharon A. Hill at her website, sharonahill.com, has this new lengthy article that looks to be interesting. Spooky seismic lakes, Loch Ness and its monster. I'm not going to read all that much from it, but it begins with Loch Ness is known for a monster and for its location in the Great Glen, the most obvious tectonic feature of Scotland. Fault lines are associated with several spooky themes. For this entry into the spooky geology canon, I'm going to touch on some of the popular paranatural ideas about fault-associated lakes. In this part 1 of 2, I'm tackling the oft-repeated relation between seismic activity on the Great Glen Fault and the Nessie legend. There are some water bodies that exist above and because of an existing fault underneath, which conjures some spooky folklore. While all water bodies may be considered liminal areas between worlds or passageways for the dead, those over faults are extra spooky because of the exaggerated ideas people have about what tectonic faults look like and how they behave. So let's begin by touching on these faulty ideas. Faults and spookiness. Fault zones, in general, are already associated with three major spooky ideas. Lights. Earthquake lights are probably a real thing, but not in the way most people think of them. If they exist in one or more forms, they occur very rarely. We do not understand the mechanism, and there is not a large body of convincing, reliable evidence. I've done extensive piecing together of what does exist in this post linked there. They are spooky and still mysterious. TST, tectonic strain theory. This is the idea by research scientist Michael Persinger, who proposed that ghosts, poltergeists, UFO sightings, and general strangeness may be the result of localized and transient geophysical forces associated with seismic areas under tectonic stress. This theory is not credible, yet it persists as a science-y, unquote, quote-unquote, idea, popular with paranormalists like this guy right here, because Persinger was a scientist and they can cite his research, which appears credible. The details are too much to go into here, so I'll save it for another post someday. And yes, I'm very well aware of the criticisms, and I don't think it solves everything, but it's entertaining, and sometimes that's as good as and as important as anything. Breath of the Gods. Woo! Take a mint. No, that's just me. Breath of the Gods. Faults in Greece and Turkey have characteristics that result in transmission of hydrocarbons to the surface. A few of these places were known to be ancient locations of temples or ritual spots, which were undoubtedly constructed due to the geological activity that occurred there. Examples include the Oracle at Delphi and the Hierapolis plutonium. Only a few faults have this exciting characteristics. Anyway, it's a very long article, some great illustrations included, and some great photographs and maps showing the different faults across Ireland, etc. And like I say, Sharon Hill is a skeptic, but we need their perspectives as well. She gives good citations. And like I said, there are links to other articles that go into more detail about some of the aspects that she's reporting here. So keeping with the lake monster bit, stunned witness photographs Ogopogo. Again, this one from coasttocoastam.com, reporting by Tim Banal, linking to the original source material. Tim says, a stunned Canadian man recently photographed what may be the country's legendary lake monster, Ogopogo. The intriguing images, one of which can be seen below, came to light when the witness, identified as Stuart, contacted a local media outlet about the strange sighting. Quote, I was sitting on my deck on a calm evening and saw the water start to swirl, recalled the witness, who lives in a home overlooking Okanagan Lake, where the creature is said to reside. When the weird movement suddenly changed direction, Stuart was surprised to see a, quote, very large and long anomaly briefly surface from the water before vanishing back into the lake. Fortunately, the quick-thinking witness managed to snap a few photos of the oddity that some suspect was Ogopogo, the legendary monster of Okanagan Lake. And yes, you can see some images there, and as mentioned, the article does link to the original source over at vicnews.com. That's VICNEWS.com. Possible Ogopogo sighting on Okanagan Lake ahead of National Sea Serpent Day. National Sea Serpent Day. Woohoo! And yes, more of the image there and other historical images of the lake. All right, three more. Of course, all from Tim and Coast to Coast AM. He's been really, really active. Loch Ness Monster spotted swimming. There's a link to a YouTube video from July. Woman visiting Loch Ness was left scratching her head when she spotted what may have been the legendary monster swimming. The intriguing footage was shared by the Loch Ness Center, which explained that the sighting occurred on July 16th as the witness, identified as Livia, and her boyfriend were watching the water near the iconic Urquhart Castle. In the video featured above, a dark and fairly sizable anomaly can be seen bobbing along Loch Ness, seemingly swimming against the current of the water. More there, and these other two we'll just quickly go through. Witness films Lake Champlain monster, ? Tim Banal, a woman walking her dog along the shore of Lake Champlain, captured footage of a curious anomaly that may have been the site's legendary monster. Intriguing sight, which was sent to longtime champ researcher Katie Elizabeth. Hey, Katie. Occurred on the evening of July 14th at a beach in Port Henry, New York. Witness Vicky Tucker was taking her dog for a walk when she looked out at Lake Champlain and, quote, noticed a strange wake turn into black humps rising to the surface of the water. Realizing she was watching something rather unusual, she smartly grabbed her cell phone and began filming the weird scene as it unfolded. And lastly, again, Tim Banal over at Coast to Coast, not lake monsters, at least not that we know of. Video, strange mystery creature spotted in Kansas divides wildlife expert. Of course, the YouTube linked to from Channel 13 WIBW has the title Bear in Shawnee County. Tim Banal writes, a photo of a mystery creature spotted by a Kansas resident has drawn divided opinions from wildlife experts. According to a local media report, the puzzling picture was snapped this past Saturday by a person in Shawnee Heights. The bewildered witness subsequently shared the photo online, indicating that a Google search concluded that the creature was a bear. However, the case was not quite so simple, as the image eventually reached wildlife experts who made the matter all the more mysterious when they were enlisted to identify the animal. Tracy Henderson of the Topeka Zoo indicated that the odds of the curious critter being a bear were, quote, almost zero, unquote. As for what it could be, Henderson mused, I'm leaning towards coyote. That said, while Matt Peake of the Kansas Wildlife and Parks Department echoed his assessment that the animal is not a bear, he offered a differing opinion on its true origin. Quote, this is a raccoon, he confidently declared, suggesting that the creature could be sick. In which camp do you fall? Are you Team Coyote or Team Raccoon? Let them know at the Coast to Coast Facebook group. All right, we're going to take another quick break and then get to, so much UFO news. Oh, gosh. We're already an hour in. Oh, no. Okay, folks, sit tight.
I'm Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
All right. Thank you for sticking with us. I'm your host, Smiles Lewis. This is Anomaly-NOW for Wednesday, August 13th, 2025. Moving into the UFO-related portion of the show. Gosh, it's already been an hour. Oh, no. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So, got this in the email. SCU, that's the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. ExploreSCU.org. So this isn't posted on their website. I think you have to get this through their email list. SCU participates in ARROW workshop in Washington, D.C. The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies recently participated in a UAP data workshop on August 5th and 6th in Washington, D.C. The event was hosted by Associated Universities Incorporated, AUI, with support from ARROW, that's the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and brought together scientific and academic leaders in an important dialogue on data quality, data management, future data collection, and improved cooperation between the various organizations involved in the scientific study of UAP. Represented were SCU, the National Archives, the Galileo Project, Society for UAP Studies, SUAPS, UAPX, National UFO Historical Records Center, that's the NUFO HRC, and National UFO Reporting Center, NUFORC, NUFORC, the Archives of the Impossible, and various academic researchers and historians, organized by Dr. Gretchen Stallman of Florida State University and Dr. Tim Spuck of AUI. The event marked a major step in fostering collaboration between academia, scientific organizations, and federal agencies. The AUI and ARROW will be releasing an update on the workshop in the near future, and the next edition of the SCU review will also carry a summary. There is also a summary of the meeting on the NUFORC site. That's the New Fork site. And so over at the New Fork site is this much more extensive reportage on it. In early August, National UFO Reporting Center, New Fork, participated in the 2025 UAP workshop, Narrative Data, Infrastructures and Analysis, quote unquote, a multi-day event held in the Washington, D.C. area. This in-person gathering was sponsored by the ARROW and hosted by, as we mentioned, AUI. The workshop was designed to address a growing challenge in the UAP research community: how to collect, integrate, and analyze narrative data in ways that are transparent, standardized, and scientifically rigorous. Yeah, this is great. I'm so glad to hear this. I had heard nothing about this until this morning, or whenever I got that email that linked to this. But yes, these great participants. Interesting to me is we've previously reported on mainstream news reports that some say haven't been actually vetted or verified that indicate that ARROW had previously, under Director Sean Kirkpatrick's head, had cooperated with such weird quasi NGOs as people associated with Enigma Labs. And yeah, if you go to the Anomaly Archives website and look for our links on Enigma Labs and the controversy surrounding them, make of it what you will. But they aren't listed here. That's interesting. And maybe there were representatives there that nobody's talking about. Not sure. But some more details from this newfork.org, NUFORC.org website. Highlights from the program. The keynote address was delivered by Austin's own Robert Powell of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. His talk, Setting the Stage, Importance of Good UAP Data, emphasized the central role that standardized, verifiable data plays in advancing our collective understanding of UAP phenomena. John Kozlowski, ARROW's current director, also gave some opening remarks. Over the course of the workshop, sessions covered breakout discussions on identifying, accessing, and integrating data sources, plenary talks on interdisciplinary approaches to UAP research, panel discussions on the challenges and opportunities of applying AI to structured data, and an interactive hackathon where participants worked hands-on with real-world data challenges, exploring ways to clean, organize, and link data sets. Wow. Well, I am very excited to hear more about this. I know there's a lot of concern and criticism for ARROW. The current Rep Luna chaired government transparency, weird secrets task force, whatever they're calling themselves, have openly criticized ARROW, called for its dissolution, not officially moving in that direction, but saying openly that they are considering defunding it. And I think this is largely because they felt that they got a better information from the FBI than they got from ARROW. But I bet money that the FBI has a lot more resources at their disposal than ARROW has, even though ARROW has allegedly been tasked with having access to a wider range of classified documents and programs than the FBI would have, I would assume. I'm no expert on any of this, but moving right along, some other interesting news from the NUFO HRC in Rio Rancho, Albuquerque, New Mexico, over at KOB.com. That's Channel 4 in Albuquerque, I assume. National UFO Records Center opens collection to New Mexico teachers. There's an article link that we'll provide, but here is the actual video of this report. It's only about a minute and a half.
Well, Rio Rancho students will get some extra lessons this year on extraterrestrials.
The National UFO Historical Records Center partnered with Rio Rancho Public Schools last year. The district gave them some portable classrooms to house their hundreds of thousands of declassified government documents and other evidence. And in exchange, they're opening up their collection to teachers and students for unique lessons in physics, history, and critical thinking.
On the internet, students are exposed to all kinds of information, true and untrue. And we want to give them the tools to be able to dissect the evidence that's presented to them and to make a good informed decision whether something is true or untrue. And in the UFO realm, it's just a really good subject matter to springboard into that critical thinking piece.
Archive volunteers met with Rio Rancho teachers ahead of the school year. They gave them a rundown of what's inside all their filing cabinets and explained how they can utilize all those resources. But it is up to individual teachers to decide whether or not to incorporate these UFO files into their lesson plans.
And if any adults out there are interested in these documents, there's an open house scheduled for Saturday, October 8th.
Well, I think I know where I'm going. October mid-month. Well, I think this is really good news. I think this is great for this organization. David Marler has created a fantastic archive there in Rio Rancho, Albuquerque, New Mexico area with his personal collection that has merged with the CUFOS and other longtime old hat UFO researchers creating one of the biggest databases and biggest archives of classic UFO literature and reports, particularly UFO encounter reports. It's a very different archive than, say, the archives of the impossible at Rice University here in Texas at the Houston Rice University Archives. But between the two, they have some of the best material, of course, rivaled only by AFU Archives for the Unexplained in Sweden. Our good friend Klaas Vaughn grabbing up all the good stuff wherever he travels. But yeah, so hope you enjoyed that video. So this reminds me, of course, of the counter argument to this kind of material as written about by Jack Brewer over at EFR. That's the Expanding Frontiers Research org. That's expandingfrontiersresearch.org. We covered this article either last week or the week before, Hynek UFOs and PR. And, I think there's a lot of valid points here. And it's basically this criticism of how archives can be used for promoting a particular agenda and give the air of academia or a rational approach to subjects, but often are just advancing their own predisposition for a particular interpretation of whatever it is they're archiving. And there are other books, of course, that have dealt with this issue, but it was, where is it? At the very end of this article, and I mentioned this before, that this is kind of a shots fired by EFR as its own archive efforts compared to those of other archives like ours or Rice or David Marler or others. But it was focusing on the work of J. Allen Hynek, who, of course, many people have a wide range of beliefs and feelings about, ranging from, he was just part of the cover-up, he was working for Blue Book, and so just like people who criticize Sean Kirkpatrick or Kozlowski or Phillips, these different directors of AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the newest version of Blue Book, some say, they're just there to obfuscate and misdirect. But here's some interesting quotes here in talking about J. Allen Hynek. Jack Brewer says, along with other less often explored examples of Hynek's talking points, we find the following item from his above-linked review of the Condon report. Quote, there is, however, one area in which the reviewer is in accord with Dr. Condon, Hynek wrote. Quote, and that is in his recommendation that science credit not be given in elementary schools for term papers and projects on UFOs. School children are too lacking in critical faculties to be turned loose in UFO land. Wow. If I ever knew about that quote, I had forgotten it. And it's very interesting because I'm on the opposite side of this argument. Even as I hear both sides, I think it's a good thing when anomalous researchers, if they're truly fair and balanced, try to use these subjects, whether it's UFOs or cryptozoology, as a way to educate children about the ways of rational thinking and critical thinking. Jack Brewer goes on to say, I direct the reader's attention to the National UFO Historical Records Center, which in 2024 opened a UFO archive on the campus of none other than the Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. It would appear the UFO Records Group at Rio Rancho Public Schools consider themselves in dissent of Hynek's position, as do I. The Rio Rancho Observer reports the collaborators aim, quote, to provide innovative ways for students and parents to engage in educational opportunities, unquote. Objectives reportedly include promoting critical thinking. So why don't they just teach critical thinking? Because it's entertaining, because it's interesting, because it's engaging, because it gets the kids' attention and interest. Whereas if you just try to start from just the subject of critical thinking, it's probably a lot more boring. Sorry, Jack. That's just my opinion. But this reminds me of something. We've got a webpage on the archive site, faked, hoaxed, UFO, or related events. And specifically, it reminds me of how, and this is something that actually bothered me, and I remember reporting on this over the course of many years on our PsyOp radio show that I did with my good friend Mac White. And that was these weird UK, England, ET school creativity exercises that kept occurring year after year at schools in England. And it's described as, quote, the project was part of the Everybody Writes scheme, which is funded by the Department for Children, Schools, and Families. Everybody Writes and the National Literacy Trust. Now, the website has since gone away. It used to be everybodywrites.org.uk. And one of the pages was reporting on an alien landing. And there was a PDF called Broomwood Case Study that you could find and link to. Well, you can still get it, of course, thankfully, through the archive.org website. But I mean, this went on from 2008 to 2013 at least. Some examples of this included Edgewood pupils tackle alien investigation in 2008. UFO crash lands at Cleethorpes Elliston Infant School in 2008. Children traumatized by, quote, War of the Worlds abduction of teacher in 2009. Sussex teacher abducted by aliens in 2009. By aliens in UFO, circa 2009. Pupils terrified after arriving at school to bloody crime scene, Fox Hill Primary in Sheffield. That was 2009. Stanford pupils investigate extraterrestrial visit in 2010. Teachers told terrified primary school children World War III had broken out and then led them to a cellar and set off fireworks and a siren, 2011. Back to the alien theme, alien investigation. Rocket lands in Sheffield school grounds, 2012. Aliens land at Daglin School, Buckhurst Hill in 2013. So what caught my attention when these things were first happening was just how many they kept going on over and over and over again. And it was years later that I discovered that it was all part of this literary trust program. But the whole point was to teach them critical thinking, allegedly. But several of them clearly stick out as traumatizing. At least some of the news reporting was reporting the parents and the kids were very upset about some of the disturbing nature of the ones where the teacher is, quote unquote, abducted by an alien, or there was bloody crime scene, or the World War III scenario. I mean, those clearly went way over the line. But I was also really happy and amazed to discover this gentleman, Gideon Reed. Now, Gideon Reed has taken on this role of skeptic of UFO debunking. And I think he's got some good ideas, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. And I think it's good to have, again, skeptics trying to poke holes or find alternate mundane explanations for strange events. So what he's most known for is the quote unquote puppetry hypothesis of the Ariel School UFO sighting. Now, I know a lot of people are going to have a very bad knee-jerk reaction to that idea, the suggestion that the kids could have misinterpreted a puppetry show for a strange alien encounter. And again, I am not claiming that is a definitive explanation, but I found his exploration of that fascinating. But what originally caught my attention after finding him writing about that was this. He writes, an unusual English class exercise. I come to this topic like everyone else who enjoys a mystery, especially one involving multiple witnesses, and as the parent of two children, roughly the age of Ariel School children were when they had their strange encounter. Just last year, my children's primary school staged a mysterious UFO landing in the school grounds. The charred wreckage of a craft was created and staged crash site was set up with a police cordon. A masked scientist in a green hazmat suit was seen collecting green goo in a test tube. An inspector with a magnifying glass performed checks, and a policeman stood by protecting the scene against tampering. Apparently, there had been a call from the Ministry of Defense and even the Prime Minister, and there was a rumor that an alien had been spotted leaving the scene. What made all this more mysterious is that it happened during the COVID restrictions on movements in the UK. So no parents, except those who were in on the hoax or played one of the characters mentioned, were able to see the UFO on the school grounds. All of the reports about it came from the children. Most other parents were not told about it ahead of time. I hadn't known it at the time, but this is a common English class writing exercise in UK primary schools that has been on the curriculum for more than a decade and is designed to encourage children to be observant when they are asked to write up a report on the incident. Well, there you go. Okay, just quickly moving right along. In other UFO news, Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk podcast recently featured a comedian guest and also the new current director, Dr. John Kozlowski of Arrow, previously mentioned. And haven't watched this. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's all right, but yeah, he's just too derisive for my taste. But a good reporting on this, of course, is our good friend Micah Hanks over at micahhanks.com. That's MICAHHANKS.com, both in his public August 7th podcast episode analyzing the unidentified Arrow's hunt for UAP and Tyson versus the Triangles. I think he does a good analysis of this episode and the bigger, larger issues at play here, not least of which is the ridicule factor that is still present in these kinds of things. He goes on a few days later in the X subscriber only exclusive content version of the show on August 10th, Astronomers, Arrow, and Triangle UAP. In this installment on the X podcast for subscribers, he examines perspectives on why astronomers may not be the most likely to observe UAP, along with a survey of famous cases involving mysterious triangular mystery aircrafts seen in locations around the world. Again, highly recommend all of his reportage. Meanwhile, this has probably been up for a while. I don't know if this is new, but the Arrow office, arrow.mil, that's AARO.mil, has a directory called UAP Imagery where they are posting various videos that they have provided their analysis of. And there are a number of recently added ones, including this one from Africa in 2020 that they label as Unresolved UAP Report. And it goes on to say the footage shows an apparent heat signature with characteristics consistent with those of a physical object. However, Arrow cannot determine whether the observed signature originates from a physical source, either as a thermal emission or a thermal reflection or other source, such as a heat differential in the environment or sensory display error. The available data is insufficient to evaluate the phenomenon's performance characteristics. And that's important to just say we don't have enough information. Moving right along, this article caught my attention by Mark von Rendenkampf. He's been writing for a number of different publications and has an interesting storied background. But this article over at thehill.com is in their opinion section titled Mysterious Orbs Demand Scientific Study. And it starts by saying, and goes into more detail, saying President Trump interviewed Air Force pilots who were utterly baffled by the objects. They seem to chase Navy fighter jets and have been captured on radar and video. The Pentagon's UFO Analysis Office is perplexed by them. Was it behind the enigmatic orbs reported by countless credible observers since at least World War II? It goes on to give quite a bit of background that's worth noting, but the thing that caught my attention was something I guess I'd heard, but I hadn't really seen the reference for. Of course, this new Air Force guy, Lohmeier, Lohmeier, is not the only Air Force fighter pilot left baffled by such an object. In a September appearance on Fox News, Trump stated that he interviewed several Air Force pilots who encountered spherical objects performing extraordinary maneuvers. According to Trump, the pilots told him, quote, "All I know, sir, there was a round object that was going 4 times faster than my F-22. He said, 4 or 5 guys that I've interviewed solid people, 4 or 5 guys that I've interviewed, solid people, great pilots for the U.S. Air Force," Trump continued, "have, quote, seen things that they cannot explain, so there's something." Trump also told podcaster Joe Rogan that the pilots observed objects, quote, "like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor," unquote. Timothy Phillips, the former deputy director of the Department of Defense's UFO Analysis Office stated in June that the Pentagon is perplexed by quote-unquote fiery orbs. And some videos that you'll want to check out over at the Saul Foundation YouTube channel. There are three new Jacques Vallée videos, 2 clips, and then the full video just came out within the last 24 hours. It's an hour and a half. As the clips range from Jacques Vallée giving advice for future UAP researchers, which also talks about the importance of artists as part of the exploration of what UFOs are. Jacques Vallée on the status of a classified UAP database. That would be the Capella database, probably, that he helped design for the Bigelow organization for Bass as part of the secret Pentagon UFO program funding. And the whole video itself is, like I say, an hour and a half. Dr. Jacques Vallée, UAP Encounters, Patterns, and the Signals of Intelligence. And yeah, you can check that out. And there's Peter Skafish of the Soul Foundation, who was the guy who I first thought of when I saw that image, quote unquote, anomalous image at the Contact in the Desert event. So, and there's so many more articles. There's several new articles about the various papers that Beatriz Villarroel has put out. I cannot go into all of this. There's just so much. But some of the headlines for articles that have come out documenting her research. There's an interesting video by Professor Simon called Roswell UFO Clue that talks about upper atmosphere objects that could be causing some of those shining objects that she's found on the plates. There's an article from Daily Grail, and I think that's from Red Pill Junkie, Wonders in the Plate, Searching for Space Anomalies Before the Age of Modern Rocketry. And then another article over at sentinel-news.org, In Earth's Shadow, a new method of detecting unidentified aerial phenomena by looking for lights in Earth's shadow. And there's just so much more. There's several articles from John Greenwald's The Black Vault that focus on collecting all the information on famous sightings like the Socorro UFO landing incident in 1964, the 1976 Iran incident, as well as a recent FAA record that added a quote-unquote black cube sighting to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base drone mystery. Just a ton more. There's a dozen more UFO related articles that are in the feed that you can check out over at our Flipboard or at anomalyarchives.org. Just goes on and on and on. There's so much stuff. And yeah, there was a couple of other sections. Consciousness, health, and mind-body connections. There's some articles about the truth about sleep paralysis. What's a sleep paralysis demon, which actually reflects an article that we talked about a few months ago called Sleep Paralysis Demons and Why They're Different to Nightmares. Oh, I did want to share with you. There's this blog or this website, coincider.com. This is the website of Bernard Bateman, who apparently is doing a lot of great work in coincidence, synchronicity research, and altered states of consciousness, and has a podcast that recently had a guest who seemed really interesting to me. This article over at coincider.com, published August 6th, The Truth About Sleep Paralysis from Fear to Transformation in Altered States, with Sheila Price Brooks. What if the terrifying freeze of sleep paralysis isn't a disorder, but a doorway? In this eye-opening episode, consciousness researcher Dr. Sheila Price Brooks joins Dr. Bernard Bateman to reframe sleep paralysis as a spiritual threshold, not just a neurological glitch. Drawing from over 30 years of firsthand experience, Sheila shares how these episodes led her toward non-human intelligence, telepathic communication, and profound inner awakening. If you've ever wondered what lies between sleep and waking, this conversation will shift your perspective. I started watching this and was immediately intrigued. I can't wait to dive more into this and find out more about Dr. Sheila Price Brooks. All right. These other articles that I'm not going to get to again, let's see, paranormal and parapsychological spiritualism articles. There's one called The Poltergeist of Cambridge Castle. There's another one that features a video. Ghost sighting sends several Indian high school students to hospital. Frightening. So there used to be, and there still obviously is, this regular incidence of school scare incidents, whether it's a weird smell or something seen, panic ensues, or weird fainting spells that may or may not be caused by an actual noxious chemical in the environment. Sometimes it seems like it's some kind of like copycat effect. But yeah, this article over at Coast to Coast AM video, ghost sightings send several Indian high school students to hospital. And then finally, there our miscellaneous frontier normal science news. Scientific fraud exposed, multi-million-dollar shadow industry creating junk science to propel academic careers. This is from thedebrief.org by Ryan Whalen. This is very disturbing because this just undermines all the important aspects about the very nature of scientific inquiry and peer review. And it just apparently is much more widespread than most people had any inkling. And this article is based on the paper, The Entities Enabling Scientific Fraud at Scale Are Large, Resilient, and Growing Rapidly, which appeared in the August 4th, 2025 Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Oh, goodness gracious. Also, The Crisis of Professional Skepticism over at mitchhorowitz.substack.com. Leading skeptics fail the test of extraordinary evidence. So, well, that's going to do it. Can't go on anymore, folks. It's too much news. Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you and hope you'll like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff, and subscribe to our website, our Patreon, our podcast, whether it's the audio or video. Just help us out one way or another. We really appreciate it. And I guess that'll be it. Good night.